are going? What's going on with everybody? It is your boy Eric, aka Young God, coming to you live in the Green Dungeon, giving it to you real raw rugged, and I am obviously severely underdressed for this interview. Um, but for the person who dressed for the occasion, I will let him introduce himself.
My name is Yves Jarvis, and it's a pleasure to be here, Eric. Thank you.
No, for sure, man. You're I got on a bonnet, man. You finna go to like you finna like you finna direct the youth choir right now, man. You know what I'm saying? You
It's
got your
exact.
Sunday's best on.
It's exactly what I'm trying to evoke, and it's Eric the Young God. I had to come correct.
Hey man, I appreciate you coming, man. How you doing today?
Great. I'm having a great day. Um, it's overcast. Could be better, but certainly could be worse.
You said you're in Montreal right now, right?
Montreal, yeah,
Is that where you living at?
yeah. I've been living back here for a couple years. I was raised partly here, about 50%, and came back right after high school. Literally like a week after I graduated high school, drove across the country. Not myself, but I was in the back seat.
You know what's like my only reference to like Canada and like what I know about Canada, specifically Montreal.
What's that?
Wrestling. I only know Montreal through wrestling.
Is
Just
that right?
yeah.
I just heard my mom and dad just went to their first wrestling show, and it's because my dad loves theater and would have probably like denigrated wrestling in the past. But one of my favorite playwrights, Robert Lepage, has a fascination in wrestling, I guess, as it relates to theater, and he's opened up a theater here in town, and he already had one, but I think he opened up a new one, or it's at the one that he's at, where he's having these wrestling events. So my parents just went, and they loved it.
Visited Montreal.
Yeah, it was in Montreal, and I don't know what the like league is or what, but what's the wrestling you're familiar with from here? It's
Just more so wrestlers from Montreal, and that's kind of like my point of reference of Montreal is wrestlers from Montreal and them referencing Montreal.
so a lot of these guys are bred in Montreal. Is that right?
Some of them, you have a few from. A lot of them are Canadians. A lot of Canadian wrestlers. A lot of Canadian
Great.
wrestlers. So,
Yeah, I also grew up in Calgary, Alberta, and I think there's a wrestler from there that.
I think Chris Jericho might be from Calgary.
Okay, there's another one. There's another big one that
Let me see who's from
passed
Calgary.
when I was in high school, I believe.
Wrestlers from
Brett,
Calgary.
Brett, I believe.
Is Bret Hart? Bret Hart is from Calgary. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. The Hart Foundation. Yes, they are from Calgary. There you go. Um, I think Chris Jericho might be from one of those places in Canada. But either way, it is interesting meeting people from Canada because I'm like, yeah, I only kind of know your provinces from or provinces from just wrestling. So I feel so ignorant. I feel so ignorant of the Canadian history.
Well, you gotta love the culture putting on for I guess, the geography. I guess put on the world stage with the culture, with sports and entertainment.
Yeah. Did you go to high school in Canada or America?
Yeah, all in Canada. I was in high school in Calgary. St.
Gotcha.
Francis. Yeah.
In Calgary, how much American history do you guys cover, like in school?
Oh, good question. Not much. Not much. I feel like we had a very thorough. The social studies was very thoroughly Canadian. Lots of Indigenous history and the colonial history and the fur trade and all this stuff. And then I remember learning a lot about Asia too, but not much about the States.
Because I feel like we learned zero about Canada
Not
in school. Like not even like a little bit. Like not even like a mention. Like we know nothing about Canada. Like if you know Canadian history, you either went
yeah,
to college or you did that on your own. Like it's not like something that you learned growing up about like Canada. So
yeah. I'm not surprised, but we infiltrate nevertheless. I mean, at least
yeah. Do
uh,
you guys talk about slavery?
yeah, yeah, because the Underground Railroad and the Canada being like a safe haven early on. Uh, that's a big about the American history. Yeah.
Gotcha. I will say like one deep cut that I know about Canadian history because I learned it in college. It's you guys have a lot of like Native Americans, or you have a lot of Native American history
Hmm.
in Canada. Like we had to listen to this whole podcast about how they were like selling uh, Native American kids in newspapers in like the 50s
Oh my
because
god.
they were like basically separating from their families. It was like, hey, you wanna you want a folio Native American or not? They're not Native. Or what are they called in? They're not Native. Are they called Native Americans in Canada?
They're referred to as indigenous or yeah, indigenous. Um, that's the only one coming to mind now.
Yeah, yeah, that would make sense. I don't. Yeah, that makes sense.
Like,
They were
yeah,
selling like 5-year-old Native or indigenous people and in the newspapers in like the 50s in Canada, and just a lot of history amongst that, which I do know.
yeah,
Which, like you said, you learn about that in school. So you talk about a lot of indigenous stuff.
yeah, yeah. That's definitely like when I think about social studies. That was what I think the curriculum was in my day. It was heavily centered around that aspect of our history.
Got you. Well, uh, it's funny because I kind of want to rewind on how we even got here. Um, I brought this up several times, but there will be times where like people like A&Rs or people like send me artists to interview, and they are usually pretty terrible artists,
Mm,
pretty bad artists. Um, so Patrick Tilley sent me you,
yeah,
and I was like, all right, well, listen to this. I don't know what this is, but we'll
mm,
listen to it. And I was thoroughly intrigued and went back to do my research, listen to like previous albums of yours. I was like, I definitely want to interview this guy because I feel like you're a very fascinating musician. You do a lot of things where I think you're about to go this way, but you go like the completely different way. I don't know if that's on purpose, but I feel like you do a lot of unconventional things where it's like, oh, you could have laid the ball up, you could have laid it up here, but instead you like did a circle and you spun, you put it between your legs, and then you shot the ball. It was I wasn't expecting you to do that. Is that something that you hear about your music?
yeah. I love to subvert expectations, so that's great to hear. I appreciate that because my own relationship to music is that I'm just easily bored. I'm just so bored, and I want to be excited. I want to have fun. So that's just. I mean, I'm very impulsive, and I like to be quick. I like action. Like I love action. So um, when I'm making music, I'm fighting. I'm fighting boredom at every twist, every line, every every riff. I'm like just trying to excite myself, and I feel like hopefully that translates and and is like invigorating to as a listening experience.
Can I tell you the last time or the most recent time you did that for me, where I thought you were gonna go straight, you went complete left.
Yeah,
The knife in me.
yeah,
And I don't know if you know why I thought you were gonna go one way, but the song starts off in the way which I would assume would be the repeating hook. I
mm,
thought that in the knife, in the knife. I thought you would like when you slide. I thought you would like probably uh, loop that like later in the song.
yeah,
That's only sung one time at the very beginning of the song.
yeah.
Do you hear that being like a repeated hook or like when just structuring that song? How did you go about that?
Yeah, I mean, I love repetition, so sometimes I wish I gave myself the chance to bring things back around. And I think that I do this on this record more than I ever have before, where there's like a return to structure, a return to form, where there are choruses, there are things, but I do like playing with that very structure itself. So, like in the Knife and Me, it's like yeah, the core it opens with the chorus, um, and then it never comes back. Uh, that song was like maybe like 4 minutes, and I just like edited it down, but the structure just kind of emerges out of a sense of like wanting to be dynamic and like wanting there to be I don't know. I want to have both a sense of this seizing and letting go. So like I want my music to both be challenging and easy listening. I want it to be on focused on. I want there to be like a depth that can be untangled if like looked at, or like kind of like a, this 3D art, this 3D or this illusion stuff, these optical illusions where you look at them and you blur your eyes and then something emerges out of that.
Yeah.
But then it's just like a beautiful pattern from if you're not paying attention to it. So I kind of want it to have that effect. I want you to be able to put it on and recognize the overall structure of it, but then I want it to be jarring and like winding and jagged, kind of.
It's interesting because I feel like with that song, it sounds like, oh, this is like a hit. The way that it sounds, at the like with the very beginning of the chorus. When structuring a song, do you ever try to, do you ever structure a song thinking, oh, this is a hit? Do you ever think of music in that way?
Well, in every moment that I'm like, anytime I rest on a moment where or anytime I engage any kind of motif, I'm trying to like cut through, like, and in terms of this action, like I'm trying to be so quick with it that I think of it all as hooks. Like I think of it just as like a geometry of hooks, a sequence of hooks. So I'm always kind of thinking about what is an earworm, and not as a strategic point, but just what excites me, like what gets me going. So I feel like there are no um, dull moments. Like I make sure that there's no dull moments because like I would just be bored in making it, and like I hope that that translates for other listeners too. Like, but just my tastes. Like my number one is Captain Beefheart, and this like constantly churning thing is like um, it's just this like just this momentum that is uh, crushing away at something. Like I think of this Joni Mitchell line, petrified wood, processed timber down to rock, and it's this elemental compression and this refinement, but it's like so, you know, I don't know. It's delicate and incremental in the micro, but in the macro, it's this like colossal churning. I don't know, and I want my music to like always evoke that. So, um, yeah, taking things apart, putting them back together.
Yeah, I think you do a good job with that.
Thank.
I know you said Joni Mitchell is like one of your favorites. I heard you say that in the interview. I found out about Joni Mitchell a few years ago, actually. It was the album Blue. And
Yeah,
I remember thinking, like, man, white people did a really good job hiding her from you. I didn't know, but white people hid her in the basement. I did not know Joni Mitchell was a thing until I heard
yeah,
that album. And I was like, they white people got the well with her. She's fire.
yeah. And you know what? She's actually from Alberta as well.
Really?
Um, yeah, and Saskatchewan. I don't know if she was either born in Saskatchewan or Alberta and then lived in one. But yeah, national treasure, um, colossal force. Um, her music is like, it really does that so well. Where something that I hope that I can bring to my work is like that, um, just that easy listening, but that inexhaustible complexity when you really get down into the nitty gritty of her words. It's like you, she's telling a story with a nice arc, but within that there's like lives, and every line there's a life, and the perspective is sprawling, and uh, yeah, I love her music. I mean, and that's not even to mention the music, the instrumental, the instrumentation is just out of this world. The way she amalgamates different genres, and the way her music is visual in the sense that it's, she's a painter too, and she paints pictures with her words and with the music itself, and it's a whole world.
No, she's amazing. Um, this will make sense after I ask it, but have you ever written a script before?
No, that's something I would love to do though. But no, I mean, I felt like I was doing that on this record, dialogues and monologues, and
Yeah.
less confessional, like kind of diary type writing as I used to do, or just like kind of catharsis through like poetic poetry or whatever, but um, I love this Sly Stone line. My only weapon is my friend. I'm a poet. So good. But I've never written. Um, I've never written for characters in that way. No, like a script to that.
Also, speaking of, because I found Joni Mitchell through this documentary called "The Year Music Changed in 1971." Really good documentary. Found
Oh
out about
yeah.
a lot of good music. 1971, very pivotal year for music. Had no
Mm-hmm.
clue. Also, just watched Sly had I think Questlove did like a documentary about Sly and the Family Stone a
Yeah,
few weeks ago, and I watched it. Really good documentary.
I bet.
Um, did not know. Don't know if you know this. Did you know? Did you know freaking Drake Uncle's in that band?
Really?
Yes, Larry Graham, the bass player.
Yeah. Crazy. I had no idea. No,
Gr-
that's crazy.
he's a great. He's like a revolutionary bass player. Like he's
Yeah.
like it's crazy, but yeah, he's in there. But yeah, I asked you that about the script thing because just listening to this album, it sounds like an album that is written by somebody who's like interested in film or like
Yeah.
playwright almost. And yeah, just listening to the way that you wrote some of these songs is very reminiscent of somebody who also dibbles and dabbles in like writing screenplays and stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. I appreciate hearing that. I definitely am concerned with with that kind of world building in that same kind of Joni sense, or just this ambiance of this painting a picture of a presence, of an embodied presence, and a grounded presence in a scene, in a vignette. I like doing that with music. I've always done that with music, but I feel like this record I was trying to do that well, and I've always done that with vocals too, where it's like, a lot of the time my mom will be like convinced that there's other people singing on the record, and I'm like, I'm your son, it's me. She thinks there's a woman doing the backups. I'm like, I'm telling you, it's me doing all of this. But when I'm recording those tracks, I'm trying to sound like somebody else, and I'm glad that it works that way, that it comes off that way.
You know, I can definitely hear what she's saying. It does on a lot of songs. Like, is there any backup vocals on the Knife in Me?
No, it's all me.
See, like,
And
it
you know what?
sounds like it.
I was having so much fun recording the backup vocals for that because I was trying to like be this gang of vocalists. Like I was trying to be this gang, and I was recording in a room where the ceiling was right at my. I cleared just about like an inch I had, and I was getting so into it, and I slammed my head right into the ceiling as I was singing like one of those backup vocals, um, trying to sound like a kid, or like I don't know. I was trying to like act like I was like acting like a kid. I'm like jumping around, slammed my head, concussed myself. It was New Year's Eve. I was just getting around. I was like, let me finish these vocals. Let me go out. I'm gonna have a great night. It's like 10 p.m. I'm getting ready. I'm like, haven't had a drink yet. Haven't popped a bottle at all. I'm in the tiny studio and I concussed myself. I didn't go out. I didn't do anything. I didn't celebrate.
Dude, I was gonna say shout out to the fro for saving you, but it don't sound like the fro saved you.
Not for nothing. It definitely helps. And then, yeah, it definitely helps.
Shout out to the fro. That's like I think that's like a bit in Norbit, the Norbit movie. He like falls on his head and his fro saved him. So shout out to fros. But yeah, it's like parts where you sound like a kid. It's like the I don't know how to imitate the parts in that song where you're like let me you know. So that's all you though.
For sure, yeah. And yeah, sometimes there's another aspect to it where I don't have any kind of engineering background. So it's all feel. And, whenever I do like go into my I work with an engineer to mix my record when it comes down to the end, and he always reassures me that the performance is the most important thing, and that's what comes through. I'm convinced of that in as a listener because there's it wasn't until like around that time you're talking about 71 where these recording innovations, these production innovations made things sound so crisp and so stark and for the best. And but there's something lost in most of recorded music history is very lo-fi, and the performance, we rely on the performances because they're so rich. Like the performances are so rich, and the recordings are rich too in their own respect. But just in terms of like, I'm recording with a very minimal understanding of compression and EQing and all this. It's all feel. So the performance, I have to rely on the performances. I have to like imprint like imprint myself onto the medium because there's kind of no safety net or there's no like calibration happening. You know?
Yeah, no, yeah. They talk about that in the doc about kind of like these new innovations to like people recording themselves, and it was somebody in some band that kind of like helped with that innovation. But yeah, from like 1971 had Joni Mitchell and Jesus Christ Superstar and just all these just very insane things. But great documentary for anybody that
Yeah.
wants to watch.
Well, yeah, for sure. That's speaking of Sly Stone and raw recordings. Is that there's a riot going on? If that's not one of the best recordings of all time, I mean, you know that you know that one. There's a riot going on.
If I'm not mistaken, I think that's 1971.
I think you're
Let me
outraged.
let me see. That's 71. That's 71. So that's my point. It's like 71's like one of the most like pivotal years ever in like music. So great album too, by the way. Great album. But I'll keep it with this. I kind of want to go back to one of your previous albums since we're talking about film, and it made me think about a film. The Same Way, but by Different Means, has one of my favorite songs by you.
Oh, thank you.
What song you think it is? There's a bunch of songs in here. Just take a stab in the dark on what song you're gonna say.
Ooh. I'm trying to think of what's on that record. There's like too many tracks on that record.
It's a lot of tracks.
I'm gonna say Exercise E is a joke.
So Exercise E, I have a comment about.
Yeah.
Great song, not my favorite though. That sounds like something from Midsummer. That sounds like something where like I'm about to like. That sounds like Illuminati music. It sounds like I'm gonna be forced to like eat a child. Like that sounds like something very evil is about to happen. I gotta like suck some adrenochrome out of a child to keep me younger. That's what that sounds like.
Midsummer is one of my favorite movies ever.
Really?
And I love it. Florence Pugh actually shared one of my songs one time, and that was a huge moment for me.
What song?
For Props off of my Green record, Sundry Rock Song Stuff.
Yeah. That's one of your more popular songs off of that album, right?
Probably because of her.
Got you. Shout out to Midsummer. But no, Exercise E is not it. My favorite song off of there is Blue V.
Oh yeah.
Because Blue V sounds, or is that in Roman numeral? Is the V Roman numeral or is it Blue V?
It was a Roman numeral in the it was enumerated when I was making the recordings. It was blue, and then I had gotten to there to 5, but no, it was Blue V. When I put it on the record, I was like, it's Blue V.
Blue V is so jazzy. It's like very like the way you're dressed and the way that sounds is perfect right now. Like you got like the Harlem Renaissance swag right now, and that song is so like jazzy and beautiful. I absolutely love Blue V. That is by far one of my favorite songs of yours.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I actually can't remember it. Like I don't know it. As you say.
Blue V is very.
Oh, I that so much, and that's great to hear outside of that, coming out of that, talking about Sly, because I was definitely listening to a lot of that Sly and that era of Miles Davis and Herbie Hancock. Biggest influences, Herbie Hancock, and that so that whole. That's what I was listening to, a lot of that stuff at that time. So that's great to hear.
Great song. I said I was going to connect that with film because, let me get this right. I watched a documentary last night actually, and I would say probably the best documentary I've watched in like the last, I don't know, 5-10 years. Great documentary. Do you speak French at all?
I do, yeah.
Because you're that's.
I'm bilingual. Yeah, my dad is is francophone from here, and my mom is anglophone from Trinidad.
See, this is my wrestling knowledge about freaking Montreal, Canada, and you guys are speaking French over there.
Yes.
So this is I don't know if this is French, but the movie is called Soundtrack to a Coup d'Etat. It's not even about. Am I saying that right?
Coup d'etat.
Coup d'état. What is that exactly?
It's like a seizure of government by the people. I guess I don't know. Is that
Gosh, that makes sense. That makes sense because what it's about. This documentary is about how American jazz players, like some of the people you named, were kind of used, uh, unbeknownstly to them, to help assassinate the Congolesian president, Patrice Lumumba, if I'm saying his
okay?
name correctly. And yeah, they had all the Miles Davis and who else is in that movie? Dizzy Gillespie. A
Right.
bunch of people they were sending over there, kind of like just warming them up to the, like, oh, America's cool. Whole time we're actually about to murder your your president who's trying to
Right.
liberate and free your country. Great documentary.
Yes, I've heard about these efforts to um, have cultural ambassadors. I guess in this regard.
So what's his face? Louis Armstrong, like he was like his title in the government was like the ambassador of like music or something. Like that was
Yeah,
like his thing, and he's thinking he's doing like something cool. Whole time they're like, hey, we're trying to get in with these people so we could like
yeah,
easily kill the guy. They end up
right.
killing him, and now you see in Congo, it's a bunch of mess going on in Congo right now because of that. So yeah,
Well, I feel like it's funny because being in a place like Montreal that has such a that is so entrenched in its arts and is so support and in Canada broadly that is so concerned with the preservation and cultivation of the arts. I feel like there's a good faith patronage in Canada and Quebec, especially of the arts and of artists, and but I think that's unique. Like I would be, of course, I would be suspicious of what the ulterior motive is, what the perverse incentive is of having like avant-garde musicians or the state of the art musicians being sent off to send a message to the rest of the world.
no, for sure. It's a crazy documentary. The
So cool.
soundtrack is beautiful, and it Blue V kind of reminded me of something that I would have heard on that documentary last night.
Oh,
So
I
so
gotta watch that.
yep, soundtrack to a Coup. Gonna let you finish that last word. A Coup.
Guitar.
There you go. Great movie. It was nominated for an Oscar for the best
I
documentary.
Yeah, that's where I heard of it
Yeah.
because I just the Oscars and I saw that name, but I didn't. And I might have even remarked that it looked good, but I didn't know it was about that, which is something I've been interested in before.
Super duper good. And I feel like I don't know about you, but I feel like I don't know enough about like I know about jazz, but every time I watch something jazz related, I'm like, I didn't know this. And
Yeah,
like I don't know if Dizzy Gillespie was actually running for president, but in the movie I think he really might have been running for president once
well,
upon a time,
I
and
didn't know.
and his whole cabin for the people that was going to be like vice president, secretary, were all other jazz musicians.
Wow.
So like Miles Davis was like the vice president, Louis Armstrong was this, and Herbie Hancock was that, and it's such an insane thing. So I cannot, out of all documentaries I've just talked about, I cannot recommend enough to go watch a soundtrack to a Coup.
Dita.
There you go.
I love that because I really love like this notion of consilience, of like the consolidation of all these different areas of research, let's say, like sciences, arts, and philosophy, and religion, and politics, and that's kind of my project in life. I think, at least in for my own understanding, and for my own purposes. Um, but the real manifestations of that, I think, are um, artists integrating themselves into areas of more structure and maybe and establishments. And I have nothing against you can't beat them, join them. um, I I think it's all the same. I think it's all the same. It's all the same. And I think that all these perspectives, we can consolidate these perspectives into something rich, and we don't have to compartmentalize everything in its right place, of course. But
So you're saying just kind of grouping all these things together and not looking at them like not being opposed to looking at these things as one and kind of in combination. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think as long as, a lot of artists don't have their faculties, but as long as one does, I think that the integration of these different disciplines is like necessary to progress.
No, no, that's a really interesting way to look at it. I feel like you see now with, I mean, just look at like American politics, like everything is kind of combined together. Where you have like a Kanye West running for president, who's like a
Mm-hmm.
musician, or you have even I feel like that's always been a thing with music, where music is used for like a tool for like expression or protest,
Right.
and a lot of that is in this. You hear a bunch of African artists and jazz artists kind of protesting what was going on in the Congo at that time. So I feel like you do see that those music and politics and theater like all kind of combining as one, and that's something that you're super like interested in doing yourself.
For sure. And I don't mean to necessarily condone the celebrity culture of like, influence. Having influence doesn't make you doesn't give you uh it shouldn't even be a foot in the door to have influence
Yeah,
because um anybody can get it. But like I said, I certainly think that for those for with their faculties straight, they should take it upon themselves as a civic duty and as a humanitarian effort to integrate themselves into the greater establishment in order to um, not to join it, but to integrate it, so that to change it, to yeah.
how do you think that we get there? Like, how do you think that I don't know, because like you said, like I feel like all of our like legends and goats are either crazy or terrible people. So I feel like it is kind of hard to get there where you find somebody with their faculties and like a decent human in music for whatever reason. Like you go back and look at like those '70s artists, it's like, oh, he was married to a 12-year-old, or he was beating on women, or he was, craziness.
Yeah. Um, yeah, and and I would even still actually make a distinction in those things where it's like in categories where it's like we all fall so short of the grace of God, and people's personal lives, at least until the legal limit. That's we know there's a clear line, but I think that it's all kind of irrelevant. But people do need to be examples of what and practice what they preach. But I would just say that like it's like, yeah, having your faculties about you and being flawed, I would distinguish them
Mm.
because the leaders of the world, the good people of the world, are all going to be flawed because we're all flawed. So that's an unfortunate reality, but it's actually beautiful because it's an opportunity with our creative faculties to change and to grow and to shape ourselves into what we're supposed to be.
It's interesting because it's a lot of things flawed. Like I was watching your interview with, I think it was Creative Control, and you were talking about how you get deemed as R&B a lot of times because you're black, you know. Oh yeah, nigga, you R&B, you know. I mean, there's no other reason, right? That's probably the main reason, correct?
Well, I feel that way. I feel that way with specific cases. It's
Okay.
like I appreciate any label. I don't want to fight against any label as a broad thing. But sometimes I'll put out a single that's like, I'm trying to do a very specific thing, and it'll be put into a narrow category because of appearances, and that I don't appreciate. But I don't reject it either. I take every label is true. I've never heard a label about me that was not apt. And that's something that I love. Is like there's this notion of like sophistry that I think is good. I was just listening to the thing about this where it's like, well, yeah, it's like sophistry is this rhetorical exercise of strengthening a position through perspective. You can ground something real and build something real in the center of this orientation around different perspectives
Mm-hmm.
and trying different orientations on. So, uh, yes,
Did you go to college?
no,
You dropped some words, man. You be dropping. You dropped some. Well, you just dropped a word where I was gonna pretend like I knew what it meant. I'm like, I'm not gonna pretend like I know what this means. What did you just
I,
say? Sophistry?
yeah, like um, sophism, and I think it comes from I think it comes from the word sophistication.
Ah,
Uh, but it's like here, let's see it's got a negative connotation, and I was
okay.
listening to a thing that was arguing for it, but in this kind of reframing of what it actually is meant to mean. Um, but it's defined as the use of fallacious arguments. So basically,
Gotcha.
or with the intention of deceiving. It says so. It's completely negative connotation, but I don't mean to express that. Um, I think that one should one should expect to be challenged and a relish in being challenged, and it should only help to embolden where you stand.
It's interesting because so when have you gotten labeled as R&B? I'll start there. Has it been like reviews? Has it been like from like label meetings? Like when have you been? When have you seen the label of this is an R&B guy or this is an R&B song?
Um, well, I would kind of maybe even distance myself from that interview because not the entire thing, but from that notion of thing because, like I said, I really want to I really don't reject any of these labels,
Gotcha.
and now it's like I lean into R&B all the time. It's like so so I really and you know what? There's something that one of the things that bothers me the most is when artists reject labels, and you hear this all the time. So I regret being on the record because I have these conversations when I think it's worthy conversations for the nitty gritty of this song is not R&B and they're calling it R&B because of my press photo. But you know, I don't know. I've also as I get older, it's like I'm leaning into things in a way that is kind of full circle how I was leaning on things when I was trying to find my voice.
Yeah.
And now that I've done so much experimenting and deconstructing, it's like I'm happy to put things back together. So I'm in a place in my life where I'm happy for people to I'm happy for people for their own purposes to pigeonhole me wherever I'm understood.
Mm. I
Yeah.
think shout out to you for being open minded. That's some real like open minded, just like really deep thinking right there. Because if I was you, I'd be like, bro, just don't just call me R and B because that's not what I am. Because if you listen to the bulk of your music, I've listened to everything that you have on streaming. If somebody does that and says it's a hell of an R and B artist right here, either they are just they're just racist. That's what that is. That's just clear cut. This nigga boy can only be an R&B artist in my head. And I get what you're saying because there are times where people almost like diminish, let's say, rap, where it's like, I'm not a rapper, I'm an artist. And
Right.
it's like, I feel what you're trying to say, but it's almost like like, I'm not just some rapper or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's funny because a lot of people who say that are just rappers. And they
Right.
can't really do anything else
Right.
outside of just rap. But regardless, it's almost like they're diminishing that and saying as if I'm much greater than this hip hop thing. I'm
Right.
this grandiose avant garde artist or whatnot. So I do appreciate you not trying to belittle what R&B is or soul is and saying that you accept that. But I do think it is belittling and just very regressive to just label you as something just because you light skin. You know what I'm saying?
Well, and especially if you go through my catalog, which nobody has to do, so nobody has to know. People can just hear my singles, maybe that are more R&B, where it's like, oh sure, and then for their purposes, they can categorize me that, and that's good. It's important for understanding to have categories. Like I do love categories, and I use these categories like in order to as exercises, like exercises and genres. I find that like I'll be like, oh, I wanna appeal to this demographic specifically, so I make a song that embodies that, and not strategic, but just as a vibe, just as a vibe, and because I like the feeling of that, and I want to speak to that, and then it always falls right into position. So it's like it always goes to the ears that like this law of attraction, where it's like so I can speak to, so I can rely on these categories And I do, and that's always been my outlook on music, is that I'm I'm not doing genre exercises, but there's certainly an aspect of that
Yeah, for
where,
sure.
yeah, where this idea of motif, um, I just love, and just kind of costumes and um, yes, yes, yeah, I love all the labels, and it's like it's necessary. It's like necessary for people to they don't nobody owes me to nobody owes me to like fully go through my catalog and extrapolate all of the information that is there. It's like I just want that, and that was my project on this All Cylinders was
Yeah.
like, let me give people songs that can speak to them, um, and they don't need to know who I am. Let me take myself a little bit out of the equation, and that was kind of the lyrical approach, like in the character, in being these characters and thing, which is something I've always done in my vocal style, but on this record it was kind of more explicit, where like trying characters on and trying to develop characters.
Yeah.
So, because I rarely know what I want. Um, I mean, I have a vision for my life, but like in the immediate, like I don't know what I want, and I don't have a great relationship with knowing what I want and need. So through characters, I find, but with other people, and when it's external, I'm like, oh, I know exactly what they should do, and I'm sure this is like in the common experience. It's like, I know exactly what the homie should do, and so there's a sense in which I can write. I'm freer. I'm unchained to my own, um, not necessarily narrow, but sometimes paralyzed perspective when I can try somebody else on for size.
It's interesting because you do have this freeing type of attitude in your music. It's funny because I was just saying how people are being like crazy for just labeling you as R&B, but I'm going to talk about one of my favorite R&B songs from you.
Yeah.
With all that being said, "Into the Forefront"
Oh.
is a very pretty R&B song, but it sounds like, and I mean this like this is like a compliment because I've never heard an R&B song that sounds like this. It sounds like if somebody wanted to make an R&B song, but before they went into the studio, they did heroin, and because you're kind of like slurring your words a little bit on this song, and it sounds like you're nodding off, but you're also like singing like it didn't impact your vocal skills. It's very
Uh,
beautiful.
well, you know what? That's great to hear because um, I feel like there's no heroin on that. I'm not. but, but I love to hear that because these altered states is something that I love to hear myself. And when I'm listening to like Station to Station, David Bowie, um, I can hear the energy. Um, when I'm listening to Fleetwood Mac, Tusk, I can hear the energy of the altered states. It's like it's good stuff. And when people let you in, there's a vulnerability to that, but there's also like this, I don't know, and Lou Reed, or Sly Stone for that matter. A lot of that record we were talking about, this riot going on. I believe he recorded a lot of that lying down, and I was listening to a lot of that. So this kind of posture was was definitely all over that record. So it's cool to hear.
No, yeah, it's definitely a different because I feel like R&B's been around for forever. So it's like any form of music that's been around for that long. When you hear something you've never heard before within that genre, it's like, oh, I've heard a million takes of this genre. Never heard anything like that. So I do think you accomplished something I've never heard before in R&B, which I feel like is an impressive feat because I've heard a lot of R&B.
That's such a flattering thing to hear. I really appreciate that.
No, it's really good. But to fast forward a little bit into your last album or your most recent album, All Cylinders, don't know if I've gotten to say this. Such a good album,
Thank you.
and it's different from the other albums that you've put out in the past. Like it is, it's. I feel like every album is different with you, but this definitely stands out as like its own unique thing. Like something we talked about something a billion times, but like something like The Knife in Me. I don't know if I've ever heard you make something like that. Like that's very different. The way it starts off with the grain, I feel like that's a very strong starting point to when you hear that, you're like, okay, this is what we're about to get into. I feel
Yeah.
like the intro is, huh?
I gear.
No, yeah, I feel like the intro is like super important on any album because if the intro is terrible, you're not setting. And this is my first time hearing this artist. You're setting the listener up for like they're probably not going to continue the album. So you have to catch the listener's ear because this might be their first time ever hearing you. And I'm pretty sure this is going to be a lot of people's first time ever hearing you with
Yeah.
all cylinders. So hearing with the grain, I would hope they would be like, okay, I'm here to stay, you know.
Yeah.
And then you follow it up like such a good album. The title track, All Cylinders, super duper good. I do love Luck's Last Luster. I think that's a very good closing. I feel like you close and start the album off super duper strong.
Thank
I could just keep talking about the album. I'll shut up. I'll let you respond to anything I said, but absolutely just great album.
you, man. That is such a pleasure to hear. I really appreciate that. Um, it did feel like the first record for me. It felt like the first record. It felt like a new start. Um, because a lot of the time, I feel like I was having this relationship of extremes on from record to record. I was doing, and I put the same but by different means out. It was off the heels of this album I made, Goodwill Come to You, which got me my first involved with the label for the first time. And so when I put the same but by different means out, I was like, oh, let me do something that kind of reflects. Let me do a sister album to this Goodwill Come. So it was kind of like a day and night situation, Yellow and Blue, and so they were,
Mm.
the Goodwill was 21 tracks. The Same was 22. And then I made my Green record. So that was that whole period before that was so the Yellow Blue, that was like a letting go. I was fully letting go and trying something new. Like before that, I had made like rock instrumentation, kind of like this record, All Cylinders. And then I paired away from that and completely let go. But when I made the next record, the third one, Sundry Rock Song Stock in 2020, I was seizing and contracting and doing, it was 10 tracks, I think. And then after that, the Zug, I let go again. It felt like a bit of a return to form. It was my first record where I lived with a kit, but I was letting go, kind of throwing just anything at the wall. And I feel like that was a whole era. And now this record, it feels like I'm tearing free from that. And like, but also it's all of that, it's all of that amalgamated together. And it's just more concise, and it's more bold, and I feel like it's just a more precise and coherent vision than I've allowed myself. I love restraints, and where there's been no restraints in my past, there were necessary frameworks for me to like have freedom within, in a way that I think it would be more, in a way that I think was more productive. Yeah, I guess like I've never really been concerned with productivity in terms of like, in terms of things being contained and like intelligible. Like I've never really cared about things being intelligible, and on this record I did.
No, I understand every word you say.
Oh, thank
On this album is very great. Yeah, I'm about to say this wasn't what is it? This wasn't Into the Forefront. You were not. This was not heroin music at all. You were very coherent. Um, the 38-second mark of One Gripe is such a beautiful sounding part. I don't know if you know what that sounds like. I don't know if you know the 38-second mark of One Gripe sounds like. Do you?
Oh, I'm not sure, but
Oh, I got you. I got you. I got you. I
thank
got
you,
you.
man.
I got you. I got you. This part right here. That's so beautiful. That da-na-da-doo, ba-da-na, da-na-da-da. That's such a that's so beautiful.
You're the best, man. Thank you. And you know what? I wrote that song about my brother. I mean, not about him explicitly, um, because I'm talking about different relationships in there. But when I refer to him, and today's his birthday, so shout out Che.
Happy birthday, Che. Happy
I'll
he
call done with this.
Yeah, happy birthday, Che, man. He subconsciously inspired one of my favorite parts of that entire album. That little 10-second that's such a I love melodies and the way that you were just playing around with that chef's kiss. Absolutely just beautiful stuff, man.
Thank you so much.
Like I said, but you can find that throughout this entire album, and I would be remiss if because I had too much dip on my chip, and I skipped something on the last album, the Zug. There is a song on there that is also one of my favorite songs of yours that you have out. I'll let
Oh,
you
yeah.
guess again. Let's see if you can get this right. Not as many songs as the last guess. But just take a guess. After the songs I've been praising, what do you think I like on the Zug?
Oh, what's on this book? See, because I can't remember my track lists.
I had a feeling you were gonna say that.
Maybe M&M's?
Great song. But no, my favorite song is track number 6, Gestalt.
Gestalt. Yes, I forgot it was. I forgot it was on there. Yeah.
Gestalt is beautiful. Why is it named Gestalt? You a big psych
Well,
guy?
yes and no. I mean, like, definitely. I mean, I guess yes. But I was doing. I was. I guess I was doing Gestalt therapy or whatever. But so this notion of something being greater than the sum of its parts. Um, yeah, an organized whole. This yeah, this was very evocative for me, and is like kind of the basis of like what inspires me to write in the first place. Is like kind of this very stark um, geometric reality. I guess this world of forms that inspires, or at least motivates me to like pick up the pen. Like anytime I'm listening to something and I'm amazed by something, when I'm inspired by something, it just it's like iTunes visualizer, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. But this geometric reality, uh, this world of forms, like motifs and the relationships between them, and patterns, and yes, that's usually what inspires me to write. And so there's a lot of material too that I talk about fabric a lot. I love fabrics. I love textiles, and I feel like that's a perfect euphemism for the fabric of reality. Let's say.
No, for sure. You also sing about I would assume you're singing about fine china on the knife in me.
Yeah.
Not fabric, but it's something. I don't know what you would call that. It's texture.
Yeah, and matter, and just that's something that I wanted to do on this record that I feel like I don't do often. Is I'm usually talking about like a lot of elements and stuff, and like I don't know, I'm usually talking more ambiguously in my past lyrically, but on this record I wanted to refer to like objects, like matter, and be a little bit more embodied. I guess and that's kind of necessary to be like a character somewhere. I had to be somewhere specific.
Yeah, for sure. No, yeah. That like I said, that song stood out for me just from the title. Because like the whole Gestalt thing is super interesting to me, and one of the like how would you put him? One of the like not founders of Gestalt, but one of the like leaders in like existential type of therapy. Guy named Viktor Frankl, interesting guy. He was in the Holocaust, and like a lot of his like ideology from therapy lended itself from him like being in the Holocaust and like just seeing all that and just being like, hey, just kind of applying that to like just existential thought or whatever. So great song. love that song. Like I said, definitely one of my favorite songs by you in your discography so far. And you're great, man. You're great. I don't want to keep you for too much longer, but if there's any last words you have to say to the people, floor's yours.
Oh, well, sometimes, well, I hope that people are inspired because that's why I make music. Like because I'm inspired by everybody, not just artists. Like I try to put my whole life into my music, and that's obviously not just music. That's obviously not just art. So I'm inspired by everything and everyone, and I hope that this can reflect that and do the same for other people. And um, yeah, I hope to be clear too. I hope that I'm coherent in what I'm saying because, and not too, highfalutin or you know, highfalutin jibber jabber because that kind of uh, that kind of is that's usually my lexicon for talking about art
Yeah,
and life. Like I love to scrutinize and I love to like break things down and I have a lot of fun talking shit, but I really want it to just be about dancing and having fun and being a child and uh, daydreaming, fantasy, like faith, relationship with God, like gratitude. That's what it's all about.
man, you are the wordsmith. You dropped another word that got me. High what? Highfalutin?
Highfalutin, highfalutin jibber jabber.
What's highfalutin? Just talking nonsense?
Yeah, highfalutin is like unnecessarily complicated.
Got you, got you, got you, got you, got you.
I definitely am guilty of that.
I was about to say you use some words that kind of very complicated, but salute, man. How about we can close out on some Sesame Street type stuff? You wanna leave us with the word of the day?
Yeah, let me think. Um, you're gonna have to cut to it. What's my favorite word?
We could do highfalutin. That was a word right there.
That's a good one.
Let's do highfalutin. FRH. I know they do like the letter as like you can do H, man, and H stands for highfalutin. Um, for everybody watching, I appreciate you guys. I want you to do two things after you get done watching this interview. The first thing is go, if you have not already, go listen to All Cylinders. It's definitely going to be something that you don't regret. And right after you listen to High Cylinders, you need to go watch the soundtrack to a Coup.
Dita.
There you go, man. Great, great album. Paired with a great movie. For everybody watching, I appreciate you guys. Until next time, I say what I mean what I say. Haters gonna hate, players gonna play, and you guys holler at your boy.